taking a look at some spotter groups out here. So this is kind of a general guideline we like to think about for some of the best Skywarn, the best spotter groups. And some of the best spotter groups are aware of forecast and hazardous weather outlooks. So the forecast and the hazardous weather outlooks, or maybe you've heard the HWO, those are all available on Chanhasen's website. All you have to do is, big map, you come right to the website and just click on your city. And you get all the products that are available. The latest forecast, is there a hazardous weather outlook? Basically what that hazardous weather outlook does is outlines the severe weather risk for the day, if any. So that tells you when we're thinking about it, our spotter is going to be necessary or not. Great place to start. Monitoring various weather sources throughout the day. You always get the question, well, I can't listen to NOAA weather radio because my office is in the basement on the northwest corner facing part of the building. There are various ways to get to our information. There is the web. Now even there's text messaging. There's all kinds of different ways. If you can access the local repeaters, that's great. People are usually talking about the weather. Seems to be a habit of Minnesotans. Great way. Otherwise, of course, the NOAA weather radio, nice strong signal pretty much everywhere here in the Twin Cities, and there's been a huge build out of NOAA weather radio throughout the state. So stay aware of the forecast, monitor throughout the day, communicate the report. I think both Todd and I would say we've heard of very frustrating things in the past where someone has seen something and we've never heard about it. To pick up that mic, to get on the net, report what's happening. That information is so critical to the Weather Service, making sure we know what is happening out there. And receive frequent spotter training. We ask that spotters receive training every other year, at least every other year. I personally like to attend several a year, just because you always get different pieces from different instructors. Different instructors always kind of have their favorite part of the slide, so you're going to hear a little bit more about something, but it's always interesting to hear more things about it. In Metro Skywarn, as a spotter for Metro Skywarn, to keep your certificate current, you're required to go to the class every other year. So it's a great way to keep up on what's happening, and that's one of my favorite parts of meteorology is it is a new science. We don't know everything. We're always learning more. The classes that we're putting on for the spotters, we're always trying to put more information into it because we want to be able to forward that information on to you as we're learning that information. So just kind of a quick thing. So the best spotter groups are aware of the forecast, monitor those sources throughout the day, communicate the report, and receive frequent spotter training. Again, about every other year is what we look at. So, piece from the training. So this is the pop quiz here for tonight. Alright, so training. What is a wall cloud? Which one of these is the wall cloud? Bottom right. We have a lot of trained spotters in the room. Alright. So this is probably one of the #1 things we train, we talk about in our training. This is also still one of the most incorrectly reported storm features. Talking about a wall cloud versus a shelf cloud. So the #1 thing, people say, well, of course that's a wall cloud. There's a big wall of cloud coming at me, right? So, but you want to think about this. Think of this more like a bookshelf. You've got your shelves sitting up here. So you've got a shelf coming at you. You think you're going to rack your books up on the shelf cloud as it's moving into you. Whereas this, you're just building a brick wall right here. You're building a wall right down to the ground. Big things to take a look at when we go through in all the spotter training is to watch which way the winds are going. This whole storm is moving towards you, and you're going to get cold wind coming out of it. Whereas when you've got this going past you, you're going to have the warm wind at your back going into the storm. So those are the big things we always thinking about what part of the storm that you're in, and how to make the judgment of what's actually happening with the storm. I just apparently can't present from that side of the screen. So thinking about spotter activation. So big thing that we get asked a lot, probably every single class I've ever taught, that's the question is, all right, well, all this information is great. When do we actually activate? When should we go out and actually start spotting? I have to leave work to go spotting. When should I go do that? Well, a couple different ways to take a look at that. Maybe when a watch comes out, maybe is it too early? Start thinking about that. If a severe thunderstorm watch or tornado watch comes out, that's probably a good time to be ready to go. You're going to want to get home, maybe have something to eat before you're going to have a long evening ahead of you. But maybe, that's maybe not the time to necessarily be out in the car waiting, because you could be waiting for a little while. The aim is to try to get a watch out, an hour, a couple hours before storms are going to start happening. On the flip side of that, a lot of organizations don't necessarily want to activate until there's already a warning out. Well, do you remember that first slide that I started on? It's talking about you've got the three things. You've got the environment, you have the radar, and you have the spotter to issue a warning. So how does that work when the spotter is not in the field to get information to know whether to issue the warning? So that's one big thing that we take a look at, is once a warning is out there, it's getting on being too late for a spotter, because that decision's already been made. And the decision to warn or not warn the storm has already happened. And the spotters weren't out there, they weren't a part of that discussion. So it's always a very fine line on figuring out when you want to activate, which is where we take a look at organizations that, and tell them, well, you should probably just have specific reasons for why you activate. And really what it comes down to is anytime there's a strong storm approaching the area. If there's a strong storm coming, it's probably time to activate. And that really kind of goes back to, having somebody who's just watching the weather. Is something happening? Is it on the way? So taking a look at this with the storm just moving on, here in this case, off to the east, what areas would you want to start getting ready for? Well, you've got this big storm here, but you've also got these, new ones popping up, down the line here that you want to start at least watching, being ready for. So something to take a look at as far as for spotters really getting ready to go. Chanhassen, we started something new this last year with a spotter activation webpage. So we actually turn counties red basically as we would like organizations to start activating. What happens basically when we turn these counties red is that also sends text messages out to the organization's leaders. Usually it's their net control people, or if they have a coordinator, it's those people that, emergency manager in some cases, that's where we're sending out that information to. So we go in and on the private website that we have, go in and activate, in a sense, these counties when the severe weather threat is, approaching their area. So that's something that is also available to spotters, and we'll, continue to be looking at other ways that we can talk to the organizations out in the area. So we're always trying to find, more ways to be able to get information out to you guys. We're always interested in hearing other ways that you'd be interested in getting information. All right, so 2008 and 2009 seemed quiet, but there actually were a couple pretty big memorable events. Everyone remembers, Memorial Day weekend, Hugo tornado, and actually that tornado tracked all the way back from in Wright County. It was a great example of a day when spotters really were an important role within that process. Because we had several spotters in the reports of wall clouds back in the Buffalo to Monticello area, just off screen left here, and you know, wall clouds, rotating wall clouds. They had hail, you know, tennis ball size hail, you know, all kinds of fun stuff out there. But as it started to move east, you know, into southern Sherburne and into Anoka County, we didn't get any more reports on the storm. So actually for a few minutes or so, we let the tornado warning expire for that area. And then, you know, just before Coon Rapids area here, we got a report of, I believe it was another wall cloud, and then very shortly after, a tornado report. So of course that ended up being, you know, a snap tornado warning that we had to get back out there again. But you know, the key thing to think about there is it was really spotters. You know, I've heard it said in my classes, well, you guys have a ton of spotters out there. You know, you don't need that many more, do you? And all I do is point back to an event like this, where we definitely could have given those people a little bit more heads up if we'd had some more spotters in that area to see what was going on with that storm. So we all know what happened with that storm. You know, unfortunately there was a fatality with that as it went into this fairly new residential area in Hugo. This picture was actually taken shortly after the storm went through. One of the residents there took a picture as the first responders were just starting to come on scene and start doing their house-to-house searches. This was the risk for that area, so the Storm Prediction Center did have this covered. You know, our forecast was pretty good for the area. Slight risk for severe weather. 30% risk for severe weather. You think, well, 30%, okay. I don't bring my umbrella when the rain chance is 30%. But thinking of really to say it's a 30% chance of severe weather for that day is a very significant risk to take a look at. So the forecast actually was really pretty much spot on that day. Now the big thing to remember with that is, although we had the Hugo tornado, in northern Iowa, Parkersburg, Iowa got hit by an EF5 tornado at almost the exact same time as Hugo was being hit. So there was a fairly widespread